10 hauntingly sinister stories from Appalachia, 10 revelations of terrifying fall horror. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees that surrounded Willow Creek. It was a peaceful little town, or so it seemed. But the woods, oh, how they whispered secrets that sent shivers down spines. People had been disappearing, vanishing without a trace, and no one spoke openly about it anymore. In the crisp autumn air, stories of sinister figures prowling the forests mingled with the swirling leaves. Parents held their children tighter, eyes darting nervously to the tree line, every rustling branch suddenly a menacing sound. The Cox family was no exception. As Mark and Sarah huddled by the fire in their cozy living room, laughing children's voices filled the air, blending with the crackle of logs. Outside, the vibrant colors of fall painted a false sense of security. For Sarah, though, an uneasy feeling settled deep in her stomach, a gnawing sensation that something was wrong. The laughter felt strained, and hushed conversations would stop when they entered the general store, making her feel all the more aware. Mark, sensing her apprehension, brushed it aside. "It's just the rumors, Sarah," he reassured. Little did they know that the rumors had transformed. The townsfolk spoke of a shadow, a vengeful spirit, an ancient deliverer of justice, haunting the very woods where their children played. Mark had brushed them off as stories, but Sarah's heart raced every time the sun dipped too low, every time the forest darkened with uncertainty. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just a few nights had passed since the latest disappearance, but for Sarah, they dragged like years. Each delivery Mark made felt like a gamble. He strapped on his worn boots, offering a reassuring smile as he stepped outside, flashlight in hand. Darkness swallowed him whole. Hours passed, and unease gnawed at Sarah until panic took root. The children sensed it, too, their laughter morphing into whispers. When the clock struck 8, the nagging fear erupted into dread. "Mommy, when's Daddy coming home?" Little Ellie asked, her voice shaking. The woods loomed, sinister and unknowable. The mere thought of Mark lost in those treacherous shadows made Sarah's heart thunder. She grabbed her jacket, flashing a dim light through the doorway, and stepped out into the night. Twigs snapped underfoot like gunfire as she ventured into the forest. The flashlight beam flickered, illuminating ghostly trees that seemed to lean in closer, hiding dreadful secrets. Suddenly, Sarah froze. In the distance, an otherworldly howl echoed, stirring the very marrow in her bones. Shadows danced among the trees, and whispers swelled around her. In a hidden clearing, figures emerged, twisted villagers, their eyes gleaming with malice. The leader of the group, a once trusted friend, spoke softly, wielding a chilling authority that made her skin crawl. The realization crashed down hard. This tight-knit community was not what it seemed. The forest drowned her cries. A heartbeat later, that shadowy figure stepped forward, a palpable terror radiating from them. Could Sarah face this deception? Could she confront this nightmare born from whispering pines and loamy graves? As she trembled, the leaves crunched beneath her feet, marking her descent into horror, where trust had morphed into threat. Would she find Mark alive? Or would she, too, become lost, swallowed by the angry woods of Willow Creek? The forest was alive with unsettling energy. Shadows weaved in and out amongst the trees, and the once familiar paths twisted into nightmarish trails. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as the figures loomed closer. She recognized them, but their faces were twisted, grotesque masks of malice and betrayal. "Sarah," the leader said, voice dripping with a cold familiarity, "you shouldn't have come here. You must understand, it's too late." She stepped back instinctively, her breath catching in her throat, every instinct screaming at her to flee. The children were back home, tucked away in their beds, unaware of the horrors lurking just beyond their doorstep. Panic rose higher, flooding her mind, drowning out any coherent thought. Where was Mark? "Why are you doing this?" she cried, desperation lacing her voice as she scanned the crowd for any trace of him. One of the villagers took a step forward. "Tom, from the grocery store." He had always been so helpful, so kind. But now, his face was an unreadable mask. The gleam in his eyes hinted at something darker, something she couldn't comprehend. "Because we have to protect Willow Creek," Tom replied, his expression twisted in a way that sent chills racing up her spine. "They must pay for what they've done. If they don't, we'll lose everything." Voices rumbled in agreement, a chorus of darkness. Their eyes seemed to pierce her, growing wider as if enjoying her rising fear. Sarah's legs trembled. She needed to escape, to find Mark, yet each way she turned, the forest closed in around her. Dread crept closer as she felt the weight of their collective gaze, judgment from former friends, now traitors beneath the shroud of night. In the distance, the howl erupted again, a bone-chilling reminder of the entity that haunted these woods. Nothing was as it seemed. "Join us, Sarah," the leader urged, stepping closer. His voice was laced with venom yet offered a sickly sweet allure. "Help us cleanse the town. Help us avenge those who felt our wrath." Rejecting the notion felt like pulling a knife from her heart. She couldn't betray everything she had ever known. Mustering her last vestiges of strength, she whispered, "No. I won't be part of this madness." Before she could turn to run, a hand gripped her wrist like iron. The fear in her stomach turned to ice as she found herself trapped among them. A sharp gasp escaped her lips. The villagers' laughter, low and menacing, echoed as they closed in. "Then bear witness," Tom sneered, the wildness in his gaze sharpening. "To what happens to those who defy us." With a thrusting motion, the group began to pull her deeper into the woods. Struggling against their hold, Sarah kicked and fought, but it was like swimming against a riptide. Suddenly, through the tangled branches, she caught a haunting silhouette, a figure just beyond the trees that appeared all too familiar. "Mark." "Sarah." His voice rang out, filled with panic. Hope surged momentarily. But before she could reach him, darkness enveloped her senses. The shapes of the villagers twisted and morphed into the shadows as something more substantial, something unforgiving emerged from the depths of the forest, determined to claim her and her family. The world blurred around her as she was yanked away from sight and sound. There were no screams, only suffocating silence. What would happen to her family? Was this the last she would ever see of Mark and the children? In that void of darkness, she was left to wonder, what unspeakable fate awaited them all in the treacherous heart of Willow Creek. Light flickered in an eerie haze as Sarah fought against the shadows that gripped her. A deep, guttural growl reverberated through the air, vibrating against her skin like a warning bell. She felt the weight of hesitation, the villagers' intent pressing down on her. Her heart pounded fiercely, each beat a desperate plea for escape. Suddenly, the grip on her wrist loosened, and she found herself free, but only for a heartbeat. Instinct kicked in. She sprinted through the underbrush, branches clawing at her arms and face like the desperate hands of the lost. Each step drew her further from safety and closer to something monstrous. "Sarah." The voice again, Mark's voice, urgently echoed in her mind, fueling her will to flee. But the forest boiled with shadows, each twisted form tightening their circle around her, their laughter a sinister backdrop to her flight. Gasping for breath, she stumbled into a clearing, the moonlight spilling onto the ground like spilled milk. She found herself alone, no villagers, no Mark, just the foreboding silence of the forest pressing against her. Her heart sank further as the realization washed over her. She had run in the wrong direction, deeper into the heart of the woods, where the night was thick and alive with malevolence. A rustling sound broke through the silence. Was it the villagers? Was Mark following her still? Fear coiled tightly within her as the foliage swayed, the shadows twisting in anticipation. She ducked behind an old, gnarled tree, her breath quickening, fear wrapping around her throat like a noose. In the quiet darkness, a figure emerged, skirting the edges of the moonlight. It was tall, skeletal, with limbs that seemed too long, moving as if it were caught in a dance of madness. Where its eyes should have been glowed a faint crimson, flickering with hunger. Sarah's breath hitched, stifled by terror. The creature paused, as if sensing her presence. It tilted its head, considering her like a predator eyeing its prey. The air froze, thick with tension and fear. She was frozen against the tree, her pulse pounding painfully in her ears, drowning out reason. Then came the howl again, louder this time, more shrieking. It was joined by others, a chorus of distorted cries rising up from the shadows, a terrifying anthem to the chaos of the night. The villagers were chanting, their voices merging with the growls and screams that filled the forest, weaving a web of dread. "Join us, Sarah," Tom's voice echoed through the trees, dark and inviting, blending into the howls. "You can't run forever." The creature lunged forward, and she bolted from her hiding spot, breaking through the rim of shadows. She ran with all her might, heart racing, but the ground shifted beneath her, twisting and buckling as though the forest itself was alive, consuming all that dared tread its paths. Branches whipped against her face, scratching and stinging as she pushed harder against the nightmare-cloaked forest. Each footfall echoed with the weight of her panic, building a lingering fear that she would never escape. In a frantic bid to find footing, she dashed toward the last faint light she could see far ahead, a desperate beacon in the dark. The sound of laughter still resonated, taunting her. She stumbled and fell, pain shooting through her ankle, but she pulled herself up, vivid flashes of her children's faces fueling her resolve. She had to get back to them. As she lurched forward again, the light dimmed, a flickering candle threatened to go out, and then she saw it, a ragged figure stepping from the shadows. It was Mark. Relief washed over her like a cold breeze, but it quickly hardened to ice as she caught the glint of something dark in his eyes, something unrecognizably malevolent. "Sarah," he called, but the way his mouth twisted was wrong. "You shouldn't have come here." Her breath caught, dread pooling in her stomach. Was he still her Mark? Or had he already succumbed to the nightmares? The forest pulsed with a malevolent energy, and the shadows surged with renewed hunger. What was left of her hope sputtered like a candle in the wind. Was there truly any way out? "Sarah," he repeated, and something cold and dangerous wrapped around his words. Join us. What had happened to the man she loved? What darkness had enveloped him? Desperation clawed at her throat as she realized the heart of Willow Creek was more than just twisted trees and hungry shadows. It was a gate to something far worse. She had to make a choice. But what would that choice cost her? The figure behind Mark shifted, its low growl rising, and in that moment, she knew her time was running out. Mark's form twisted under the eerie moonlight, shadows stretching and pulling at his edges as if grasping for him. Sarah's thoughts raced, every instinct demanding she flee, yet her heart ached at the sight of him. He looked like the man she loved, but there was a nagging feeling gnawing at her, something dark within those glinting eyes. With each step Mark took toward her, the forest seemed to amplify the tension. The laughter of the villagers hung heavy in the air, wrapping around her like a suffocating cloak, drawing her deeper into a web she couldn't see. She could almost hear the echoes of chants rising, their hollow tones tugging at her mind. "Sarah, why do you fight this?" Mark's voice dripped with a sickly sweet allure, inching closer. "You don't belong out here, alone and afraid. You belong with us." "No." The word burst from her lips. Sarah shook her head, pulling back. A desperate thought flared in her mind. She had come looking for Mark, to save him, but what if saving him meant losing herself? The creature behind him swayed, its laughter mingling with the chant. Sarah couldn't afford to let it distract her. She had to be strong. "Mark, please." She pleaded, trying to reach through the fog clouding his mind. "You have to fight it." He blinked slowly, a flicker of recognition momentarily illuminating his face. Sarah surged forward, emboldened by that small glimmer of hope. She reached for his hand. But the moment her fingers grazed his, the crimson glow in his eyes ignited with fury. "No!" he roared, pulling back as if she had burned him. "You don't understand. This is freedom. You don't want to run anymore. You want to join us? The shadows roared with a life of their own, swirling around them like a living tide. It thrummed with a pulse that matched her racing heart. She had to think fast, every second was a dagger digging deeper into her resolve. The chilling night wrapped tightly around her, but she couldn't allow herself to succumb. Mark, I love you. Fight it. Her voice cracked as she struggled against the tide of despair. A shred of hope clung to her heart, but the darkness was thick, oppressive. Would it be enough to reach him? He staggered, confusion flickering through his expression. Then, something behind her caught his attention, a horrific, gnarled face creeping from the shadows, a twisted form that defied any logic. It seemed impossibly tall with limbs bending at unnatural angles. Long, clawed fingers extended toward her, dragging back her fears as it closed, and Sarah stifled a scream, twisting away from the grotesque specter. Adrenaline surged again, urging her limbs into chaotic motion. Mark! Stop this! We can find a way. Desperation spilled from her as she turned to flee, the creature leaping with inhuman grace, the branches reached for her, sharp edges biting into her skin, motives roiling beneath her feet. She dashed past her hopes, racing blindly, the light flickering dangerously ahead like a debilitating heartbeat. She wouldn't let it go out, she'd find a way back somehow. Join us, Sarah. The villagers echoed once more, a spine-chilling chorus now trembling through the trees. The air around her thickened, almost gasping with hunger, and the dread of what awaited clawed beneath her skin. In that dim light, a crazed figure stood alone at the edge of the clearing. Another villager. Another shadow. It swayed back and forth, a sickening grin plastered across its face. Her heart sank. It was Tom, his raving eyes bathed in malevolence. Don't resist. He chanted, a macabre mirth dancing in his words. We're all waiting. It's a family now. With a sudden surge of terror, the forest groaned, echoing their taunts, and she felt the weight of the shadows pressing down, entreating her to submit, dragging her back into the void from where no one returned. As Sarah stumbled, the earth crumbled beneath her, opening like a mouth eager to swallow her whole. With one final glance at Mark, who now looked more like a stranger than her own love, she made a choice. She turned into the gaping maw of the woods, racing deeper into the dark, the echoing calls of her family haunting her, but then, from the shadows, something much worse emerged, a shape that didn't just hunger for her body but for her very essence. And in the fading light, she realized she wasn't just fighting for her life, she might very well be fighting for her soul. How could she escape this nightmare? Before her lay the vast abyss of the forest, its silence pregnant with danger. What awaited her on this treacherous path? Would she find Mark before it cost her everything? The darkness enveloped Sarah like a heavy mist, heart hammering against her ribs as she sprinted. Every footfall echoed in the silence, a reminder that she wasn't alone. The whispers of the villagers flit around her amidst the thick branches, their promises dripping with poison. She felt the faint rustle of leaves behind her, the specter of Mark and Tom chasing her into the abyss. The shadows were hungry, and they would not be satisfied until she too was consumed. Branches clawed at her arms, tearing through her shirt and scratching her skin, but she pushed through. The pain served as a stark reminder of the real world, one where she had fought to keep Mark safe, to bring him back. It all felt so distant now. The weight of despair dragged her down, but she could not let it win. She had to escape. Sarah! A distant voice called, breaking through the chaos. It was soft and sweet, more like a memory than a reality. Was it Mark? Did he really care? She pressed on, desperation carving her path deeper into the shadows. You can't run from us. The voices echoed, growing louder, more insistent. An army of shadows rallied behind, determined to drag her down into their suffocating embrace. She stumbled upon a clearing, moonlight spilling onto the ground like spilled ink. A small glimmer caught her eye, and as she approached, her breath stilled in horror. It was a mirror, flat and pristine, reflecting not just her image but the encroaching darkness of the trees around her. The edges smiled, almost beckoning her to peer into its depths, but she recoiled. What awaited her on the other side? A chilling laugh erupted from behind her, twisting her stomach with dread. It was Tom again, weaving through the trees like a wraith. That one tea help you, Sarah. You'll never escape. His grin was wide, madness dancing in his eyes, and behind him loomed Mark, the ghost of the man she loved twisted into something grotesque. Mark, please. She cried, her voice cracking as she fought for control of her thoughts. I'm right here. You can fight this. But his eyes held a vacant glint, and for every heartbeat, she felt more isolated. Tom's laughter echoed in sync with the forest's pulse, a dark symphony playing over her dreams. Together, we can be free. Tom shouted, as if convincing her was the key to his own salvation. The branches around them twisted, the forest breathing in synchronized rhythms, waiting, hunger rising. Join us, Sarah, Mark murmured, but his voice was hollow, a ghost of the man she adored. Her heart sank as the realization hit her, the much-loved essence of Mark was buried beneath layers of darkness, and she might never bring him back. Every second she wasted in doubt drew her closer to the edge, and the shadows craved her surrender. Fighting back tears, she turned and dashed toward the mirror. Maybe it was a portal, a chance to escape the clutches of despair. She needed to act, no more waiting. With a scream locked in her throat, she lunged at the surface, desperate for salvation. Her body collided with the glass cold as ice and she felt the shimmer of energy ripple around her. But as she tumbled through, instead of an escape, the world warped and twisted, pulling her deeper into agony. Was she still in control? A flicker of light emerged, solidifying into eerie shapes. The villagers stood waiting on the other side, their eyes glinting with anticipation. Sarah! Now you're one of us! They cried in unison, their voices rising in a chorus that cut through her soul. She was trapped between the realm of nightmares and her fading memories of love. What lay ahead in this nightmarish dimension? Would she find Mark, or would she be forever doomed to join the ranks of the lost? A splintering scream echoed through the darkness as she felt the pull of the void, threatening to consume every last bit of her spirit. How long could she hold on before the darkness finally claimed her? The world around Sarah twisted, colors bleeding into one another as she stumbled out of the mirror's grip. She could still hear it, the terrible chorus of the villagers, their words seeping into her mind, wrapping around her consciousness like a python constricting its prey. You're one of us echoed ceaselessly, an unholy mantra that crawled under her skin. The ground beneath her was soft, a mushy pit of earth and roots that sank and squelched with every step. She was no longer in the clearing. Instead, she found herself in a dank, dim cavern, shadows deep and suffocating. The light had fled, leaving her enveloped in a thick, foreboding gloom that felt alive and breathing. Heart racing, she pressed on, each breath a struggle against the moldy air. A flicker of movement caught her eye. In the distance, just beyond the reach of her vision, the villagers lurked. Their faces were shadowy and indistinct, shifting just out of focus, but their eyes glinted like sharpened blades under the sparse light seeping through unseen crevices. Sarah's pulse quickened. If they were here, then Mark and Tom had to be too. Mark! She called, desperation spilling forth from her lips. Can you hear me? Her voice barely made a ripple in the oppressive silence that followed. She shivered, fingers trembling as she brushed against the cold wall of the cavern. The whispering intensified, voices rising in a chorus that harmonized with her growing fears. You can't escape, come join us, Sarah. The invitation felt like ice curling around her heart, the reality of their words wrapping tighter around her, an invitation to darkness. Footfalls echoed in the distance, and she froze, heart rattling like a tambourine. Someone was coming. Her breath quickened, and she pressed her back against the cavern wall. The shadows elongated, stretching as the shapes drew near. Sarah, a voice, soft and familiar, drifted through the darkness. Are you hiding? It was Mark, or at least the echo of what had once been Mark. The way he called her name chilled her to the bone, like fingernails scraping across a chalkboard. I'm right here. She shouted, panic sharp in her throat. Her reality hung in the balance, wavering like a candle flickering in the wind. "Why are you afraid?" he asked, stepping closer. His figure, once so strong and comforting, now hovered like a specter. "We can be free together. Mark, you're not like this. Fight it." She pleaded, but his eyes held no warmth, no spark of the love they once shared. Just hollow darkness, echoing back her own spiraling despair. That a shudder swept through her as Tom emerged behind him, grin wide and manic, eyes alight with their usual feverish glow. "You see, Sarah. He wants you to join us," Tom said, tauntingly. "Together, forever. You'll never have to suffer again." "Join us," Sarah, Mark echoed, his voice merging with the sinister harmony of the villagers echoing all around them. "No," she cried, a surge of defiance coursing through her. But the words felt feeble against their collective compulsion, a storm of shadows pressing at her mind. She had to fight, had to break free from their grasp. Desperation gave her strength, and she turned away, forcing her legs to move. The darkness behind her sighed, the shadows writhing and clutching as she darted deeper into the cavern. She could hear the echoes of their laughter chasing her, the twisted melody chasing her through darkness. Rounding a bend, she came across a portal, a warped reflection similar to the mirror she had entered. A pulse of light flickered at its edges, promising something beyond the nightmare. But as she moved closer, dread filled her, the haunting whispers returning, "You won't survive. You will only belong." Just as she reached out, a heavy hand gripped her shoulder. Cold enveloped her as she spun around, heart sinking as an overpowering force dragged her back. Would she find escape, or was she destined to lose herself forever within this accursed realm? The shadows began to close in, and for the first time, Sarah felt a crushing weight of hopelessness. How could two part of her heart, twisted by darkness, feel so utterly real? The grip around Sarah's shoulder tightened, a steel vice of freezing dread. She turned slowly to face the shadow looming over her. It felt like ice creeping into her veins, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The darkness pressed in tighter, smothering the last flickers of hope. "Let go of me!" she screamed, twisting in desperation. But the hand held firm, an iron anchor in a storm of chaos. The whispering escalated, filling her mind with a cacophony of sinister promises: eternal peace, unity, and the assurance that she was never alone again. But she knew better. She could feel the decay festering in their words. Suddenly, the voice released her. A fleeting moment of liberation. Sarah took a step back, coming face to face with the figure that had seized her. It was Mark, but he was altered, facade cracking, his features twisted into a mask of rage and sorrow. "Why won't you join us, Mark?" she pleaded, tears stinging her eyes. "Fight it. Remember who you were." His laughter echoed, a brittle sound that reverberated in the cave like shattering glass. "You think you can save me? We are far past saving." He flared his arms, revealing the others, villagers emerging from the shadows, their faces wild, mouths twisting into cruel grins. They moved like wisps of smoke, coiling around her, closing in. The once familiar warmth of Mark felt like a distant memory. This was a stranger dressed in his flesh. The shadows reached toward Sarah, fingers stretching with malevolence, clawing hungrily at her. Just then, she spotted Tom, his eyes alight with feverish delight, grinning widely, the gleam of madness shining through. "Doesn't it feel good, Sarah? To finally belong?" "No." She gasped, forcing herself to turn away, seeking another path, a flicker of light, anything but this suffocating darkness. She ran deeper into the recesses of the cavern, the murmurs of her past echoing relentlessly behind her. "Sarah, you belong to us." As she sprinted, the cold air sliced through her lungs. Every heartbeat was thunder, reverberating with the specters of her friends intertwining, their voices blending into a terrible symphony of despair. She skidded around a corner, praying for an exit, an escape. The cavern opened into a vast chamber, towering formations of rock spiraling upward like the fingers of an enormous hand. In the center stood a jagged stone altar. It hummed with energy, pulsating with a sickening, eerie light. She approached it, and as she did, the whispers intensified, rising to a fever pitch. "You must embrace it, Sarah. What is this place?" She gasped, forcing her feet to move despite the dread coiling in her gut. "Your salvation," a voice promised, echoing from the stone. "Your truth, what truth?" She shouted as the villagers drew closer, their shadows pooling around her, suffocating her in sheer force. A vision flickered in the stone, a glimpse of her life before the darkness, the laughter, the warmth, the love. It twisted and morphed, unraveling before her eyes into scenes of torment. She watched in horror as the faces of her village filled with sorrow transformed into those of twisted entities, laughing in preternatural delight. "Embrace your fate!" they roared, voices mingling with a thunderous crash that shook the ground beneath her feet. "No!" Desperation surged within Sarah as realization hit. This was a trap, a masquerade hidden in shadow. Without thinking, she lunged toward the altar, reaching out. It felt like a tether of light, urging her. As her fingers brushed the stone, a jolt of energy shot through her, visions colliding in a dizzying rush. The laughter and whispers faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. But from the silence came a low rumble, a pulse of rumbling dread. The villagers recoiled, eyes widening with fear, their howls of discontent rising above the stillness. But what had she awakened? The ground trembled violently, and cracks snaked along the stone, gaping with darkness beneath. "Sarah!" Mark's voice rang out, panic mingled with desperation. "You have to see. You need to stop this." But what had she just unleashed into the world? The shadows began to stir again, a rush closing in, hunger overwhelming the light she had tapped into. A choice loomed in front of her: dive deeper and unveil the truth, or turn back and become one of them, lost forever. As the shadows lunged toward her with renewed fervor, Sarah took a deep breath, heart hammering in her chest, and braced for the confrontation to come. Would she be the savior or the sacrifice? The darkness erupted like a tempest as Sarah found herself suspended between choices. The jagged altar loomed large, its pulsating energy calling to her, while the figures of her friends twisted into monstrous shapes before her eyes. She felt their presence wrap around her, suffocating, clawing at her sanity. "Sarah, please!" Mark's voice cracked through the cacophony, desperation layering the thin veneer of his rage. "Don't give in. Fight with me." The ground shook violently beneath her, a deep growl reverberating through the stone. Shadows danced frantically, their edges burning with a strange luminescence as though they were alive. She felt the heat close in, burning her skin, seeping into her mind. "Join us. We are the future, Sarah." Tom's laughter rattled through her. She shut her eyes tight. The memories flooded her days of laughter, warm summer nights, the comfort of familiarity. But they morphed into flashes of darkness, visions of her friends twisted in torment. Every gnashing grin, every wide-eyed stare taunting her will to resist. In a moment of sheer defiance, she dove forward, but the shadows were thick, recoiling from her touch, dragging her back. The light of the altar shimmered, whispering promises of salvation. "Embrace your destiny, Sarah. Embrace us now." She screamed, her voice rising above the turmoil. "I choose my own fate." With that declaration, she ripped her mind free from their tendrils, and a burst of energy coursed through her. The altar blazed, illuminating the chamber in bright light that drove back the enveloping darkness. The villagers shrieked, their eyes suddenly wide with horror. The violent tremors ceased momentarily, and Sarah felt the rush of adrenaline sink with her heartbeat, a cacophony of urgency. She could see their figures drawn in a sharp relief, the horror etched into their features. Mark's face wavered between the familiar and the unrecognizable, anguish overcoming his tainted laughter. "What are you doing?" he hollered, rage clashing with an undeniable plea. "I'm saving us," she shouted back, determination fueling her spirit. "You have to fight them. It's the only way. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, the shadows darting toward her like a swarm of locusts. They lunged, clawing at her with cold fingers, but she was ready. Light! She called out, and the altar surged, its energy flaring in brilliant waves. The shadows shrieked, thrashing as they were pushed back, billowing against the intense glow surrounding Sarah. She saw flashes of her friends failing, their bodies collapsing into grotesque forms as their minds succumbed. They were tethered to this malevolent force, robbed of free will. "Sarah, please." Mark begged again. "It's too late for me." "No." She cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, part from fear, part from the weight of her choice. "You have to push through. You have to remember." And then, she felt something shift in the depths of the shadowy mass, an echo of familiarity, a fleeting moment of recognition. The dark figures froze momentarily, both frightened and intrigued. "Fight back!" she yelled, heart racing. "Find the light within you." Suddenly, Mark gasped. Hope flickered across his features, his eyes narrowing in focus. The surrounding shadows quivered, confused, threatening to twist him back. "You're right, Sarah. I can still fight." Joy met dread in an exhilarating clash. The shadows seized the momentary doubt, lunging with multiplied rage. They almost consumed Mark again, but a beam of light exploded from the altar, illuminating him brightly, piercing through the darkness. The other villagers reeled back, their once cold eyes now glistening with the hint of humanity. "Together!" Sarah urged as Mark stepped forward, determination breaking through his despair. "We can do this." The energies collided, erupting in a maelstrom of chaos as they pushed against the shadows. The sound was a scream of longing, a battle of wills, as the ground quaked violently beneath them once more, but their cries for light met with an insatiable hunger for despair. Would their combined strength be enough? Or would the shadows swallow them whole? As the ground continued to tremble, Sarah felt the darkness closing in again, aware that whatever lay ahead could mean her very end. Then, a chilling thought struck her like a dagger: what if the shadows had more control than she dared to believe? The ceiling of the cavern creaked ominously above her, and just when she thought hope might surface, cracks began to form in the stone, ominously reminiscent of something far worse than mere shadows. What could come next from the depths of the cave? The darkness recoiled, swirling like a living entity, angry at her defiance. Sarah's pulse thrummed in her ears, as if urging her forward, daring her to confront the nightmare. Mark stood beside her, resolute, the remnants of their friendship sparking between them like fireflies in a storm. But the shadows weren't done. They coiled tighter, thrumming with a malicious energy that sent chills skittering down Sarah's spine. "Stay focused," she shouted, fighting to keep her voice steady, her eyes darting to Tom and the others, who still writhed in pain. The need to save her friends surged within her like a tidal wave. "We're stronger together. We can break this." In response, the shadows screeched, a sound like 1,000 nails dragged across the blackboard of reality. They dove at Sarah and Mark, clawed fingers streaking through the light. Instinct made her flinch, but then she steadied herself, gripping the altar with white-knuckled determination. "No. You won't take us." Sarah's mind raced. She recalled how they used to explore the woods, laughter echoing beneath the trees. She could feel that warmth fading, replaced by gnawing dread. "Hold on to that," she thought. "Hold on to the memories. You can remember. You can fight." She urged again. Mark's eyes flickered with battle. I remember." he roared, a fierce defiance igniting within him. Their light merged, glowing brighter, pushing against the living shadows. But as the darkness recoiled, it revealed something far more sinister lurking just behind its veil. A figure materialized, looming and hulking, cloaked in darkness, its eyes smoldering like hot coals. "You think you can escape?" it boomed, voice like thunder, shaking the very foundations of the cave. "You think holding on to your pathetic memories can save you? They are chains that bind you to this place. Sarah felt icy fingers crawl up her neck. They weren't memories, they were vulnerabilities. She shouted against the terror, "We're not your puppets. We're still here." As if in response to her defiance, the figure lunged forward. Shadows peeled back like curdling smoke as it reached for her, the power of despair threatening to crush her spirit. She saw its massive form reflect the faces of those who were lost, twisted into agony, a haunting collage that made her stomach churn. "Sarah!" Mark's voice broke her focus as he was ripped away, pulled back by a swarm of shadows, clawing at his feet, dragging him towards that monstrous figure. A scream of fear erupted from her lips, desperation cascading through her. "Mark! Fight! Don't stop!" She drew on every ounce of courage she had. If this nightmarish figure thrived on fear, she wouldn't give it what it wanted. The light from the altar flared brighter, illuminating the cave in a dazzling display, a beacon against the encroaching darkness. Yet, the shadows remained relentless, pressing against every inch, trying to drown out the light. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. The cracks began to widen, and the sound of rumbling intensifying echoed like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Sarah felt the very air vibrate with anticipation, a primal fear that hinted at cataclysmic change. "Not again!" Mark cried, his face a mask of terror. As the darkness swirled, it rushed towards them, eager to consume. They were at a tipping point, the altar's light blinking like a dying star. We have to use our memories as weapons." Sarah shouted, and her heart raced with panic, but the shadows shrieked a warning, the weight of their gathering mass pressing like 1,000 hands against her chest. Could memories truly become their salvation, or would they become the very chains that bound them? Above the cacophony, a voice whispered through the darkness, promising salvation laced with eternal darkness. "Join us or be lost forever." Would Sarah choose to wield the past or let it drown her? The ground shook again, threatening to split beneath their feet, and the shadows laughed, eager for their despair. How much longer could they hold out? What lay beyond the cracks in the cavern's ceiling? Waiting to be unleashed. The tremors intensified, shaking Sarah to her core, echoing the turmoil within her heart. The shadows pressed tighter around Mark, hungry for despair, but they would not have her. Not now. She couldn't allow these twisted memories to sway her resolve any longer. "Remember our love, Mark. Remember our children." The urgency in her voice sliced through the chaos as she fought to rally his spirit once more. "Think of the nights we spent together, how we dreamed of a brighter future. We can't let them win." Mark's eyes met hers, a flicker of confusion mingling with ferocity. Was he hearing her? Was the darkness finally loosening its grip? "Sarah, I can't hold on," he shouted, straining against the shadows that clawed at him, dragging him further into despair. "Then remember," she urged, stepping closer to the altar, its warmth thrumming like a heartbeat against her skin. "Our wedding day, laughing with the kids at the creek, the first snow, the warmth of each other's arms. Use those memories." Behind her, the sinister figure loomed larger, hatred spilling from its twisted visage, foul whispers curling through the air like smoke. "You think memories can save you? They have chained you to this hollow reality." It roared, dark energy swirling as it leaped forward, claws extended. "Not today." Sarah screamed, gathering every ounce of courage she possessed. She felt the altar pulse beneath her fingertips, illuminating her surroundings in a radiant glow. "Stay close to me, Mark," she yelled, pulling him toward the light. "We can become stronger together. Remember how we used to conquer the world." In that critical moment, hope ignited a spark within Mark's eyes. The warmth of their shared memories flooded through them, rippling against the shadows like a tide. "I remember," he gasped, shaking beneath the weight of darkness, but it was there, dangerously close to slipping away into the void. "Fight back," Sarah pleaded, squeezing his hand. "We've faced darkness before, and we can do it again." With every word, she felt the shadows recoil, their false bravado wilting before the radiant power of love and memories. The cavern shuddered again, and the diabolical figure snarled, its form flickering like a dying fire. "Join us!" it shrieked, the voices of the villagers melding into one tortured chorus. "Together, we can create something far beyond your understanding." As the shadows surged in a final, desperate assault, a blinding flash erupted from the altar. Sarah's memory of laughter, joy, and warmth crashed into the darkness, wrapping its frigid fingers around desperation and dread. Mark's face transformed, warmth filling his eyes with recognition. "I choose us!" he screamed, his voice a booming counterpoint to the whispers that drowned out all hope. With a shout that vibrated like thunder, their memories erupted, illuminating the cavern in a kaleidoscope of color, a reflection of love, laughter, and familial bonds that blossomed through time. It was a force of beautiful magnitude, brighter than any darkness that dared oppose them. The cavern trembled violently, the darkness shrieking as it splintered apart. The ground quaked beneath them, echoes of light racing through the twisted shadows, forcing back the insatiable darkness that had once seemed so majestic. "Hold on!" Sarah shouted as the cavern split wide open, yawning into an abyss that swallowed the darkness. The wind gusted, blasting against her skin, wrapping around her like a protective shield. "Sarah!" Mark yelled, but his eyes burned bright, and she felt it, his spirit breaking free from the shackles of despair. His form surged forward, fusing with the radiant energy pulsing around them. Together, they pushed against the void, launching a counterattack that sent shockwaves through the cavern. The twisted figure screeched, its body fraying like a forgotten curtain in an autumn wind. "You will pay for this!" It howled before being engulfed by the radiant brilliance, shadows unraveling and scattering to nothingness. Sudden stillness enveloped the cavern, the echoes of darkness fading. Sarah collapsed to her knees. Panting, heart racing, and yet she felt warmth envelop her. Mark slid to her side, pulling her close, tears mingling as relief flooded them both. "We did it, we broke free," he whispered, disbelief and gratitude dancing in his eyes. "I was so scared," Sarah admitted, her voice quivering, filled with the weight of all they had endured. "And now, we can go home," he reassured, pressing his forehead against hers. "But we'll never forget, will we?" "No," she promised, a smile breaking through the tears. "We'll remember this as our strength." Together, they rose, stepping hand in hand toward the remnants of the altar's light, the path opening before them. The woods surrounding Willow Creek felt different now, no longer sinister shadows lurking, but a world filled with possibility and hope. They emerged into the crisp night air, finally free from the clutches of despair. The moon illuminated their path, guiding their return to a heart once lost, now found again. As they walked home, whispers of the past faded, replaced by the tender laughter of their children waiting for them. Love had triumphed, and while the scars remained, they had forged something beautiful, like the dawn after a long, dark night. So remember this story, my friends. It's proof that even amidst the darkest horrors, love and hope can pierce the shadows. For more incredible tales and to witness the strength of the human spirit, you need to subscribe now so we can explore more stories together. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let us grow this community of storytellers. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the light.